Have you ever noticed how the most successful people share one critical ability? It's not their intelligence or their connections, it's their mastery of self-control. The people who achieve greatness in this world have learned to control four specific areas that most never master. Most people never discover this secret because it requires something many aren't willing to give: disciplined thought and consistent action. If you feel stuck, unable to reach your goals despite your best efforts, you're missing these four crucial elements of self-mastery. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how controlling your mouth, mind, humor, and money creates the foundation for extraordinary achievement. These principles have transformed the lives of countless individuals who applied them diligently, and they can do the same for you. Now, before we continue, understand that these timeless principles require practice. They aren't quick fixes, but rather fundamental shifts in how you operate in the world. The good news: anyone can master them with persistent effort. The power of controlling your words. The words that pass through your lips carry more power than you might realize. Every statement you make acts as a seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. Just as a farmer carefully selects which seeds to plant, you must be equally selective with your words. This principle stands as one of the most fundamental yet frequently overlooked aspects of personal achievement. Throughout history, the most accomplished individuals have recognized the creative power of speech. They understood that words are not merely descriptive but formative. They don't just describe reality, they help create it. This understanding isn't mystical speculation but practical psychology. Your subconscious mind, which governs approximately 95% of your behavior, accepts the statements you repeatedly make as commands to be executed. Consider how many times you've heard someone say, "I can't afford that," "That's impossible," or "I'll never be able to do that." These seemingly innocent phrases aren't merely observations, they're programming statements that lock you into limitation. The person who habitually declares financial limitations programs their mind to identify and reinforce those very limitations rather than seeking creative solutions. When you repeatedly tell yourself you can't accomplish something, your mind accepts this as truth and works to prove you right. Your subconscious doesn't question these statements, it simply acts on them as instructions. It's as though you've programmed a sophisticated computer with faulty instructions, then wondered why the output is flawed. Let me share a revealing observation from years of studying successful individuals. They almost never make categorical statements of impossibility. Instead, they speak in terms of process, method, and timing. Rather than saying, "That's impossible," they ask, "How might this be accomplished?" Instead of declaring, "I'll never achieve that," they inquire, "What steps would take me toward that goal?" This subtle distinction in verbal habits creates an entirely different mental orientation. The remedy? Begin monitoring every word that leaves your mouth. Before speaking, ask yourself, is this statement aligned with my goals? Does it reflect the person I wish to become? This conscious filtering may seem cumbersome initially, but like any habit, it becomes automatic with practice. Within weeks, you'll find yourself naturally speaking in patterns that support rather than sabotage your ambitions. Replace limiting phrases with empowering alternatives. Instead of "I can't afford that," try "How can I create the means to acquire that?" Rather than declaring something impossible, ask "What steps would make this possible?" This simple shift transforms obstacles into challenges that stimulate creative thinking. One particularly destructive verbal habit is the expression of negative certainty about future events. Statements like "This will never work," or "I'm going to fail at this" create self-fulfilling prophecy. They deactivate the problem-solving capabilities of your mind and direct your attention toward evidence that confirms your negative prediction. Equally harmful is the habit of excessive complaint. When you repeatedly verbalize dissatisfaction without constructive intent, you accomplish two destructive outcomes. First, you reinforce your perception of powerlessness. Second, you train those around you to associate your presence with negativity, thereby diminishing your influence and opportunities. Successful individuals understand that words create reality. They speak deliberately, choosing expressions that reinforce their vision rather than undermine it. They eliminate complaints, excuses, and negative predictions from their vocabulary. They understand that verbal discipline isn't merely a matter of politeness, but a fundamental success strategy. Consider how this principle applies to your interactions with others. When you speak about colleagues, family members, or associates, your words not only express but also strengthen your perceptions of these individuals. See critically of someone often enough, and you'll find it nearly impossible to see their positive qualities. Conversely, when you verbalize appreciation and acknowledge others' strengths, these positive perceptions become reinforced in your awareness. This principle extends to how you speak about circumstances. The individual who habitually describes economic conditions as terrible or disastrous experiences those very conditions, while another person in identical circumstances who describes challenges and opportunities experiences a very different reality. Same external circumstances, entirely different internal experiences. Now, this doesn't mean engaging in delusional positive thinking. It means adopting a language pattern that acknowledges challenges while focusing on solutions. It means speaking as though your desired outcome were inevitable, not impossible. It means describing problems in terms that make them addressable rather than overwhelming. There exists a direct correlation between verbal precision and mental clarity. Vague, generalized statements like "everything's going wrong" or "nothing works out for me" create mental fog that prevents effective action. By contrast, specific statements such as "I'm facing 3 specific challenges that require solution" create mental clarity that facilitates decisive action. Pay particular attention to the questions you habitually ask, both silently and aloud. Questions direct your mental focus with remarkable precision. When you ask, "Why does this always happen to me?" your mind dutifully searches for explanations of your apparent victimhood. When instead you ask, "How can I use this situation to my advantage?" your mind redirects toward constructive possibilities. The habit of verbal discipline becomes especially crucial during periods of stress or crisis. It's during these challenging times that negative verbal patterns emerge most forcefully, precisely when they cause the most damage. Develop the practice of monitoring your speech most carefully when under pressure. These moments of challenge offer the greatest opportunity for transforming your verbal habits. Many resist this principle of verbal discipline because they confuse negative speech with honesty or realism. They believe that acknowledging challenges requires describing them in the grimmest possible terms. Nothing could be further from the truth. One can be entirely truthful while framing challenges in terms that empower rather than discourage action. Start today by catching yourself in the act of negative speech. When you notice yourself speaking words of limitation, stop mid-sentence and reformulate your statement. This will feel awkward initially, but persistence will transform this conscious effort into unconscious competence. Within weeks, you'll find yourself automatically speaking in patterns that support your goals. Remember, the words you speak today shape the reality you'll experience tomorrow. Choose them with the care they deserve. Practice verbal discipline not as a superficial positive thinking technique, but as a fundamental principle of achievement. Your words are continuously programming the most powerful computer on earth, your subconscious mind. Ensure that your verbal programming leads to the outcomes you desire rather than those you fear. Mastering your mental forces. Your mind is the control center of your entire existence. Every achievement, every failure, every experience you have begins as a thought. Yet most people drift through life allowing their minds to wander aimlessly, driven by external circumstances rather than internal direction. This surrender of mental control represents perhaps the most costly mistake in human experience. The average person experiences thousands of thoughts daily, many of which are repetitive, unproductive, and limiting. Research indicates that approximately 70% of these thoughts are negative or fear-based, and up to 90% are repetitions of previous thinking patterns. Left unmanaged, this mental chaos creates a life of similar disorder. The individual who permits random thoughts to dominate their mind surrenders control of their destiny, just as surely as a ship captain who abandons the helm during a storm. Mental mastery begins with a fundamental recognition. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer and director of your thoughts. This critical distinction creates the space necessary for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Without this recognition, you remain perpetually at the mercy of whatever thoughts happen to arise in your consciousness. Controlled thinking begins with awareness. Throughout your day, pause regularly to observe your thoughts. Are they constructive or destructive? Do they move you toward your objectives or away from them? This simple practice of mental observation creates the foundation for thought mastery. Initially, you may be startled by the disorder you discover. This awareness, though potentially uncomfortable, represents the essential first step toward mental discipline. Develop the habit of thought classification. Each thought that enters your mind belongs to one of three categories: constructive, destructive, or neutral. Constructive thoughts generate positive emotions, creative solutions, and productive actions. Destructive thoughts produce negative emotions, limited perspectives, and counterproductive behaviors. Neutral thoughts neither advance nor impede your progress. By consciously categorizing your thoughts, you develop the discernment necessary for effective mental management. When you detect a destructive thought pattern, implement the practice of thought substitution. Nature abhors a vacuum, including mental vacuum. You cannot simply eliminate negative thoughts. You must replace them with constructive alternatives. For instance, when you catch yourself dwelling on potential failure, immediately redirect your attention to specific actions that would produce success. This redirection, practiced consistently, gradually reforms your habitual thought patterns. Next, implement the practice of directed thinking. This means consciously choosing to focus your mental energy on specific problems, opportunities, or goals. Allocate time each day for uninterrupted contemplation of your most important objectives. This concentrated mental effort generates insights and solutions that scattered thinking never produces. The most accomplished individuals in every field share this capacity for extended, focused thought on specific subjects. Guard the entrance to your mind with vigilance. Just as you wouldn't allow strangers to enter your home and rearrange your furniture, don't permit random ideas, suggestions, or opinions to infiltrate your thinking without examination. Question everything before accepting it as truth. This critical evaluation applies equally to information from supposedly authoritative sources, popular opinions, and your own assumptions. The quality of your life correlates directly with the quality of the ideas you admit into your mind. Pay particular attention to your information diet. In this age of constant media exposure, the content you regularly consume shapes your thinking more powerfully than you might realize. News focusing predominantly on disasters, crimes, and conflicts creates a distorted perception of reality that generates unnecessary fear and pessimism. Selective attention to information relevant to your goals and well-being represents an essential aspect of mental management. Fear and worry represent perhaps the most destructive mental patterns. These emotions consume enormous mental energy while producing nothing of value. Studies indicate that approximately 90% of what people worry about never occurs, and of the remaining 10%, much proves less serious than anticipated. When confronted with fearful thoughts, analyze them rationally. What precisely am I afraid of? What is the worst possible outcome? What can I do now to prevent or prepare for this possibility? This analytical approach transforms vague anxieties into concrete challenges that can be addressed methodically. It redirects mental energy from paralysis to productive action. Fear, properly managed, becomes not an obstacle but valuable information that guides effective preparation. Develop the practice of concentrated mental imagery. Your subconscious mind responds powerfully to vivid mental pictures, regardless of whether these images reflect current reality or imagined possibilities. Spend time daily visualizing your goals as already accomplished, experiencing in detail the emotions, sensations, and circumstances of your desired outcome. This practice isn't merely motivational, it programs your subconscious to recognize and utilize opportunities that would otherwise go unnoticed. Cultivate the habit of solution-oriented thinking. When facing challenges, the natural tendency is to dwell upon and elaborate the problem. This problem-focused thinking rarely produces useful outcomes. Instead, after clearly defining the challenge, immediately redirect your mental energy toward potential solutions. Ask yourself, What would constitute an ideal resolution of this situation? What resources do I have or can I develop to create this outcome? What's the first step I can take immediately? This solution orientation transforms problems from sources of distress to opportunities for advancement. Master the skill of mental pivoting. This involves the immediate redirection of attention from counterproductive thoughts to constructive alternatives. For example, when you catch yourself engaging in self-criticism, consciously pivot to acknowledging your strengths and previous success. When dwelling on obstacles, pivot to focusing on available resources and opportunities. This mental agility, developed through practice, enables you to maintain productive thinking even amid challenging circumstances. Develop the habit of completing your thinking. When facing a problem, resist the temptation to abandon the mental work halfway through. Persist until you've reached a conclusion or identified a clear path forward. Incomplete thinking leads to hesitant action and mediocre results. The discipline to think problems through to their logical conclusion separates the accomplished from the average. Implement regular periods of mental silence through meditation or similar practices. The constant mental chatter that characterizes most minds prevents the deeper insight that emerges only during periods of internal quiet. Even brief daily intervals of mental stillness increase clarity, creativity, and emotional equilibrium. This practice of inner silence constitutes not a spiritual luxury but a practical necessity for peak mental performance. Recognize the cyclical relationship between your thoughts and your bodily state. Physical tension, poor nutrition, inadequate rest, and insufficient exercise all diminish the quality of your thinking. Conversely, optimal physical condition enhances mental clarity and emotional resilience. Mental mastery therefore includes attention to physical well-being as an essential supporting element. Finally, understand that mental mastery represents not a destination but a continuous practice. Even the most disciplined minds experience periods of negativity, confusion, and limitation. The difference lies not in the complete absence of such experiences, but in the capacity to recognize and redirect them promptly. Progress in mental management isn't measured by the elimination of all unproductive thoughts, but by the decreasing time between their occurrence and your conscious redirection of them. Your mind, like any powerful tool, produces results according to how it's used. Direct it intentionally, guard it carefully, and employ it completely. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. Master your mental forces and you master the primary causative factor in your experience. The proper use of humor. Humor represents one of humanity's greatest gifts. Yet, like all gifts, it must be used wisely. The manner in which you employ humor reveals much about your character and influences your path to success in ways many fail to recognize. Of all the elements of self-mastery we shall discuss, the proper control of humor might seem the least significant. This misperception leads many to underestimate its profound impact on both personal development and professional achievement. Throughout human history, the capacity for appropriate humor has distinguished the wise from the merely clever. The greatest leaders in every field have demonstrated the ability to use humor not as mere entertainment, but as a powerful tool for connection, tension release, and perspective maintenance. Conversely, individuals with otherwise exceptional qualities have often undermined their potential through the misuse of this powerful human faculty. There exists a fundamental distinction between humor that uplifts and humor that diminishes. The former creates bonds of goodwill and opens doors of opportunity, while the latter erects barriers and undermines relationships essential to achievement. This distinction isn't merely a matter of taste or style, but reflects a profound difference in character and wisdom. Consider first the destructive forms of humor. Sarcasm that wounds under the guise of jests, jokes made at others' expense, and self-deprecation that reinforces negative self-perception. These forms of humor might generate momentary laughter, but they simultaneously generate lasting damage. The individual who habitually employs such humor sacrifices long-term benefit for short-term gratification, the hallmark of an undisciplined mind. Sarcasm, derived from a Greek word meaning to tear flesh, often functions as disguised aggression. The individual who regularly employs sarcastic humor typically harbors unexpressed resentment that finds indirect expression through ostensibly humorous remarks. This pattern indicates not wit, but emotional immaturity, the inability to address conflicts and frustrations directly and constructively. When you regularly engage in humor that belittles others, you foster resentment rather than rapport. Those who smile outwardly at your jokes may inwardly resolve to limit their association with you. No momentary amusement justifies the permanent loss of potentially valuable relations. The wise individual recognizes that temporary social approval gained through others' diminishment represents a poor exchange for lasting trust and respect. Cynical humor, which finds amusement in pessimistic interpretations of human nature and motives, creates a particularly destructive mental orientation. The habitual cynic conditions their mind to expect the worst in every situation and individual. This expectation inevitably manifests in experience, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of negative perception and interaction. What begins as supposedly sophisticated wit gradually transforms into a prison of pessimism that precludes the optimism essential for achievement. Similarly, while self-deprecating humor might seem harmless or even modest, it conditions your mind to focus on your shortcomings rather than your strengths. Remember that your subconscious accepts as instruction the messages you repeatedly send it, whether in earnest or in jest. The individual who habitually jokes about their incompetence, physical flaws, or failures programs their mind to magnify these very aspects. What appears as humble self-awareness often functions as unconscious self-sabotage. This principle applies with particular force to humor regarding financial matters. Observe those who regularly joke about their poverty, debt, or financial mismanagement. You'll find that these humorous comments typically reflect their actual financial condition, not because the jokes describe reality, but because they help create it. The subconscious mind, accepting these statements as instructions, works diligently to maintain the conditions that make the jokes accurate. The constructive use of humor, by contrast, strengthens connections and enhances your influence. It finds amusement in life's universal experiences without targeting individuals. It lightens tense situations without trivializing important matters. It demonstrates wit without requiring victory. This positive application of humor serves not merely as social lubrication, but as a powerful tool for perspective maintenance and stress management. One of the most valuable applications of constructive humor involves the ability to laugh at oneself without engaging in self-deprecation. This seemingly subtle distinction holds profound implication. Self-deprecating humor focuses on supposed deficiencies and reinforces limitations. The ability to laugh at oneself, by contrast, demonstrates the psychological security and perspective to acknowledge imperfection without being defined by it. This capacity signals to others both confidence and authenticity, qualities that naturally attract both respect and opportunity. The wisest practitioners of humor understand its rhetorical power. A well-placed humorous observation often communicates truth more effectively than direct statement, particularly when addressing sensitive topics. Throughout history, court jesters could speak truths to kings that would cost advisors their heads. This phenomenon operates in contemporary settings as well. Humor, properly employed, can bridge differences, diffuse tensions, and communicate difficult messages with minimal resistance. Proper humor also involves appropriate timing and context. Certain environments demand seriousness and focused attention. The individual who interjects humor when circumstances require gravity demonstrates not cleverness, but poor judgment. Observe carefully those who cannot maintain seriousness when situations demand it. You'll typically find this pattern indicates deeper issues of self-regulation and emotional maturity that manifest in other areas of life as well. The capacity for humor during challenging circumstances, without minimizing their significance, represents a particularly valuable form of mental discipline. The individual who maintains perspective through appropriate humor during difficulties demonstrates the emotional resilience essential for sustained achievement. This ability to find light amid darkness without denying the darkness distinguishes those who merely endure challenges from those who transform them into growth opportunities. Develop the habit of analyzing your humorous tendencies. Do you use humor as a shield to deflect from uncomfortable topics? Do you employ it as a subtle weapon against those you resent? Or do you utilize it as a tool to create genuine connection and relief from life's inevitable pressures? This honest self-assessment, though potentially uncomfortable, provides essential information for personal development. The patterns of your humor reflect the patterns of your thinking, patterns that either support or undermine your aspiration. Pay particular attention to the subjects you habitually joke about. These topics typically reflect areas of emotional significance in your life. The frequency and nature of your humor regarding money, relationships, work, or health often reveal underlying attitudes and beliefs that shape your experiences in these domains. Humor thus serves as a valuable diagnostic tool for identifying limiting perspectives that might otherwise remain unrecognized. The integration of humor with the other elements of self-mastery creates particularly powerful results. The individual who combines verbal discipline, mental control, and appropriate humor demonstrates a level of self-regulation that naturally commands respect. Moreover, this integration creates a sustainable approach to achievement. The capacity for perspective maintenance through constructive humor prevents the burnout that often afflicts those pursuing ambitious goals. The wisest practitioners of success understand that humor, properly employed, serves as a powerful ally in achievement. It makes you memorable, approachable, and influential. Improperly used, it creates unnecessary obstacles on your path to accomplishment. Few adjustments yield greater returns than the transition from destructive to constructive humor pattern. Resolve today to eliminate destructive forms of humor from your repertoire. Replace them with wit that builds rather than breaks, that unites rather than divides. This simple adjustment will improve both your relationships and your opportunity. The patterns of humor you establish today create the patterns of experience you'll encounter tomorrow. Choose these patterns with the wisdom their importance deserves. Financial self-discipline. Money responds to those who master its principles and scorns those who ignore them. The difference between financial freedom and perpetual struggle often lies not in income but in the habits that govern one's relationship with money. This truth explains the seemingly paradoxical reality of individuals with modest incomes achieving financial security while others with substantial earnings remain perpetually distressed. Financial mastery represents not merely a specialized skill but a fundamental aspect of personal sovereignty. Of all the domains requiring self-discipline, money management often proves most challenging. This difficulty stems from the emotional significance we attach to financial matters. Money represents not merely purchasing power but symbolizes security, freedom, status, and even self-worth for many individuals. This emotional entanglement complicates rational decision-making and consistent behavior. The mastery of financial emotions thus precedes the mastery of financial mechanics. The foundation of financial mastery begins with a principle so fundamental it's frequently overlooked: spend less than you earn. This axiom, simple in concept but challenging in application, forms the cornerstone of all financial success. No sophistication in investment strategy can compensate for its absence. The individual who masters this single principle, even while ignorant of more complex financial concepts, inevitably moves toward prosperity. Conversely, the person who violates this principle, despite extensive financial knowledge, moves inexorably toward distress. This foundation requires precise knowledge of both income and expenditures. Remarkably, surveys indicate that the majority of individuals cannot accurately account for their spending, particularly for discretionary items. This financial unconsciousness virtually guarantees suboptimal decisions. Implement a system for tracking every expenditure, however small, for at least 90 days. This practice alone typically identifies substantial opportunities for painless reduction in unnecessary spending. Develop the habit of viewing every expenditure through the lens of necessity and value. Before each purchase, ask yourself, is this essential to my well-being or progress? Does its value justify its cost? This deliberate approach to spending eliminates the impulsive decisions that gradually deplete resources without delivering proportionate benefit. Applied consistently, this simple practice can increase effective income by 20–30% without any reduction in genuine satisfaction or well-being. Understand the psychological forces that drive excessive consumption. Advertising constantly stimulates artificial desires by associating products with emotional states or identity characteristics we find appealing. Marketing creates perceived needs distinct from genuine requirements for well-being. The disciplined individual recognizes these manipulative techniques and evaluates purchases based on actual utility rather than promised emotional satisfaction. Social comparison constitutes another powerful driver of financial behavior. Many individuals attempt to maintain consumption patterns matching or exceeding those of their social reference group, often incurring debt to sustain this appearance. This behavior represents a form of financial self-deception, creating an illusion of prosperity while actually moving further from genuine financial security. Develop the strength of character to make financial decisions independent of others' consumption patterns. Establish the practice of methodical saving. Rather than saving what remains after spending, spend what remains after saving. Designate a specific percentage of all income to be set aside before any discretionary purchases. This systematic approach ensures consistent progress toward financial security. Even modest amounts consistently saved accumulate dramatically over time through the power of compound growth. Understand the critical distinction between assets and liabilities. An asset generates income or appreciates in value. A liability costs money to maintain or depreciates over time. The path to financial independence involves systematically increasing assets while minimizing liabilities. Many individuals mistakenly classify consumptive purchases as assets, particularly for items like vehicles, electronics, and other depreciating goods. This misclassification leads to the illusion of wealth accumulation while actually reducing net worth. Implement the principle of value-based decision-making for major purchases. This approach evaluates the expected value of an item across its entire useful lifetime rather than focusing exclusively on initial cost. Often higher quality items commanding premium prices deliver superior value through extended durability, enhanced functionality, or reduced maintenance costs. This long-term perspective often identifies opportunities for genuine economy that short-term thinking misses. Resist the social pressure toward conspicuous consumption. Many sacrifice financial security for the appearance of prosperity. They purchase symbols of success before achieving the substance, thereby delaying or preventing the very success they wish to project. This pattern represents perhaps the most common financial self-deception in contemporary society. The truly wealthy, as distinct from the merely affluent, typically maintain consumption levels well below their financial capacity, particularly during the wealth accumulation phase. Develop the practice of delayed gratification. The ability to postpone immediate satisfaction for greater future benefit distinguishes the financially successful from the perpetually struggling. Research consistently demonstrates that this capacity for delay serves as one of the most reliable predictors of financial outcomes across diverse populations. Like any skill, this ability strengthens through consistent practice. Begin with small decisions, consciously choosing to postpone purchases for increasingly extended periods. Implement automated financial systems that apply your decisions consistently without requiring repeated willpower. Automatic transfers to savings accounts, investment vehicles, and debt reduction programs ensure consistent implementation of your financial strategy regardless of temporary emotional state. This systematic approach leverages technology to support your financial discipline rather than relying exclusively on fluctuating motivation. Develop financial intelligence through consistent study and application. The principles of wealth creation remain largely unchanged across generations, yet few devote time to understanding them. Even modest knowledge, diligently applied, yields remarkable results over time. Commit to regular learning about financial concepts, not as an academic exercise but as a practical discipline with immediate application to your circumstances. Practice patience in financial matters. The most powerful force in wealth creation is compound growth over extended periods. Those who demand immediate returns often engage in speculative ventures that destroy capital rather than build it. The steady, methodical approach ultimately outperforms the frantic pursuit of quick return. This patience requires the discipline of persistent action. Knowledge without application remains merely potential power. The principles outlined thus far deliver value only through consistent implementation. This implementation requires the fifth element of self-mastery, the discipline of persistent action. Many individuals experience momentary inspiration that prompts enthusiastic beginnings but fails to sustain enduring effort. They initiate diet plans abandoned within weeks, savings programs discarded at the first temptation, or business ventures relinquished at the first obstacle. This pattern of inconsistent action guarantees inconsistent results. Persistent action begins with clearly defined objectives. Vague aspirations produce vague results. Define precisely what you intend to accomplish and by what specific date. This clarity focuses your efforts and enables meaningful measurement of progress. Develop the habit of daily action toward your primary goal. No matter how modest the step, ensure that each day moves you closer to your objective. These daily actions, though individual, individually small, accumulate into remarkable achievements over time. Anticipate and prepare for resistance. Every worthwhile goal encounters obstacles, setbacks, and periods of apparent failure. These challenges eliminate the uncommitted majority, leaving success available to the persistent minority. Expect difficulties not as indications of defeat, but as inevitable features of the achievement landscape. Maintain physical vitality to support sustained effort. The mind's willingness to persist often depends on the body's ability to endure. Regular exercise, proper nutrition, and adequate rest aren't merely health practices, they're essential components of achievement. Associate with others committed to persistent action. Human behavior tends to align with one's social environment. Surrounding yourself with disciplined, action-oriented individuals naturally strengthens your own tendency toward consistent implementation. Measure your progress objectively and regularly. This assessment provides both motivation through visible advancement and guidance through the identification of effective strategies. Without measurement, enthusiasm substitutes for effectiveness, often leading to activity without achievement. Develop resilience through proper interpretation of setbacks. Temporary failure offers valuable education unavailable through success. Extract the lesson from each disappointment, adjust your approach accordingly, and resume action with enhanced knowledge. Remember that persistence doesn't mean rigid adherence to failing methods. It means unwavering commitment to the objective combined with flexible adaptation of techniques. When one approach proves ineffective, maintain your goal while modifying your strategy. The capacity for persistent action represents the decisive factor in achievement. With it, even modest talents produce remarkable results. Without it, even extraordinary abilities yield disappointing outcomes. The integration of self-mastery, the four domains of control we've examined, words, thoughts, humor, and finances, function not as isolated skills but as integrated elements of a comprehensive system of self-mastery. Their full power emerges only when developed in concert rather than in isolation. Consider how these elements interact. Controlled thinking naturally produces measured speech. Disciplined financial habits reflect and reinforce mental discipline. Appropriate humor indicates balanced perspective, which facilitates both thought control and verbal restraint. The development of these abilities follows a specific sequence. Mental mastery forms the foundation, as thoughts precede both words and actions. Verbal discipline follows as the natural expression of controlled thinking. Proper use of humor demonstrates the maturity to maintain perspective amid life's challenges. Financial discipline represents the practical application of these principles in the material world. This integrated system of self-control creates a positive spiral of development. Initial efforts in any area strengthen your capacity in all areas. Small victories build confidence that enables larger achievements, which in turn generate momentum toward comprehensive self-mastery. The ultimate objective extends beyond the individual elements to the development of character, that consistent pattern of thought and action that determines your destiny more surely than any external circumstance. Character, properly developed, makes correct action automatic rather than requiring constant conscious effort. Begin where you find yourself weakest, as improvement in your area of greatest efficiency yields the most immediate benefit. However, recognize that lasting progress requires eventual attention to all four domains. Remember that self-mastery represents not the denial of human nature, but its fulfillment. It liberates rather than constrains, empowering you to direct your energies toward chosen objectives rather than dissipating them through undisciplined expression. The path to this integrated self-control demands patience. These habits develop gradually through consistent practice rather than through sudden transformation. Each day of disciplined effort strengthens the foundation of character upon which achievement rests. The rewards justify the effort many times over. The individual who masters these four domains possesses capabilities that separate them from the vast majority who live at the mercy of undisciplined impulse. This mastery creates not only external success, but also the internal satisfaction of self-determination. Begin today the systematic development of these fundamental controls. Your future self will thank you for the gift of freedom that only self-mastery can provide. Remember this: your success in controlling your mouth, mind, humor, and money directly determines your success in all other areas of life. Master these four elements, and you master your destiny. So make the decision right now to take control of your words, direct your thoughts with purpose, use humor that builds rather than breaks, and manage your finances with discipline. This path will lead you not only to achievement, but to fulfillment. If you found value in these principles, make sure to subscribe for more wisdom that can transform your life. The journey of self-mastery begins with a single decision. Make that decision today.